Welcome back to the channel. Today's video, I'm going to cover something that I touched on during my 1,000-mile review on this 2022 CForce 600. I had two pet peeves during that review, and one of them was the suspension. For the price you pay for the ATV, I felt like CFMoto could have done a much better job having a more tunable suspension like they do on the 800 and the 1000s. So what I ended up doing was ordering a set of Stage 1 Hester Edition Elka Shocks, and they are here. So I'm going to go ahead and unpack these and show you guys what I bought. I'll do a quick, one-sided install. What I'll do is I'll do the front shock, and then I'll do one of the rear shocks. But before I do that, I'm actually going to drive one of the tires, the front tire, up on a ramp to try to show you the stock suspension and how it flexes. And then I'm going to do the rear tire as well and show you how that flexes on a car ramp. I live in a development, so it's really hard for me to do a real test right now, but I will be testing these hopefully this weekend once they're installed. So time for the unboxing. All right, put that there. So all four shocks obviously come in one box, and at first when I opened this up, I thought I only had two shocks, and I ended up reaching out to John Hester, and I'm like, hey, I'm only seeing two shocks. And then all of a sudden I saw that there was a perfectly cut piece of cardboard in between the two upper shocks, and underneath them obviously was the other two shocks. So that was completely my fault. But if you receive a set of these for your ATV, don't panic that, oh my god, I'm missing something. You're not. So these appear to be the front, if you can see there. They got the high speed compression checked, low speed compression checked, and rebound checked, signed off. So that's the front shock, one of the front shocks. This one, I'm presuming, is also the front shock, or other shock. Again, these are Stage 1s. I went with Stage 1s just because of my riding style. I didn't feel like I needed anything really higher than that, beefier than that. But time will tell, so once I test these. So this is the other front shock. And here are the rear shocks. So here is the rear shock. Same thing, high speed compression, low speed compression, and rebound. All right, so I got that out. Awesome, I'm so excited, I can't wait to do this. Now, I have 1,200 miles on this ATV, and I feel like my stock suspension is now finally starting to loosen up a little bit. It's not as stiff as it was when I bought it new. So that's something to think about when you do buy one of these machines. The suspension is incredibly stiff. So, but it will loosen up over time, but it's not going to be anything like these. So let's put these back, and I will grab a ramp, and I will do a stock shock, like a flex or flex test on the stock shocks. Show you guys that. All right, so now my goal is to obviously drive this up on a standard car ramp and try to see. I have a feeling when this wheel goes up on here, what that back one is, I'm thinking is probably going to lift up, but the rear ones have a lot of drop when you jack them up, so I could be surprised. But I just want to see if I can get it tippy with the stock shock. So probably not the best. I mean, if you look at the rear, move this camera up. If you look at the rear, that wheel is just about ready to come up and shift into the left probably. So there is some flex here, and like I said, the suspension, the stock suspension is about a year old, so it does have some softness to it from stock, but you can see there that it looks like it is starting to come up. I'm going to move around this way, show you guys the side, and then I'll come around this way, Show you guys that side. So now I'm going to attempt to do the rear. All right, so there's the rear. Come around to my left. You can see in there, I mean, the distance of travel with that shock. Again, I'm trying to look for, like, that front wheel up there looks like it's, actually, that front wheel is almost off the ground. If you look at it up front, it looks like there's a lug on it. Let me move it, see if I can spin it. Hold on. You can see it's turning. So this on the ramp is actually lifting this whole front shock completely out and almost lifting this whole wheel off the ground. So when I install the Hesters, I'm going to do the same thing, or the Hester Edition Elkas, and let's see if I can keep all the other 3 wheels on the ground when I do the ramp test. So we'll see. Stay tuned. All right, guys, welcome back. Unfortunately, I didn't film putting on these shocks. I started them on one day, and turned out that I got into a couple of the bolts and the nuts were like either torqued on, or they were just ridiculous for me to get off. So I had to get, you know, a 1/4 inch breaker bar, sprayed them with some penetrating oil. Just be careful when you do, if you do that, watch your rotors, watch your brakes. You don't want to get any of that stuff on there. But the install went fairly well. My only issue was there's not a lot of room on the front top of the where the shock bolts are. It's very tight to get a ratchet. You can get a wrench in there, but it's very tight to get a standard ratchet drive in there. If you have the wrench ratchets, that's probably the best thing to use, or a side, you know, pneumatic, you know, like an air wrench. But, you know, it took me a while. I did get them on. So let me, I'm gonna do the ramp test now that I did when I had the stock shocks on. And this is with the Elka shocks on, all right? So as you can see, with this up on the ramp and that shock compressed, that back wheel is probably not up as far as the other one was with the stock shocks, if you can see that. And, you know, I tried to, I mean, it looked like it was sitting on like maybe a portion of the lug with the stock shocks. But with this, I mean, it's not moving. It's touching the ground. So nice, you know, articulation there. So now I'm going to do the rear. All right, so here's with the rear. You guys remember the front wheel was pretty much almost off the ground with the stock shocks. This is not. The amount of travel on this thing is just amazing. I'll bring this in so you guys can see it. So the cool thing is, I don't know if you guys can see it in here, the amount of drop that this shock has compared to the stock shocks. So that's going to give you that extra drop, like if you know you're dropping into a mud puddle, or you're traversing over rocks. I did notice as soon as I put these on, it is really soft, and I'll show you guys. I'll rock it a couple times for you when I get this off of here. Now if you look over here at the compression of this shock, I mean, look at that. So this shock is actually taking on most of the work. Obviously it's being compressed versus the other side that is being extended. Same with the rear. Let me lower this. I don't know if you guys can see, that's the left shock. The right wheel is up and still have a decent amount of travel there before it would bottom out. So very happy with that. Unfortunately, I did not do a, you know, if you look at John Hester's video on this specific four-wheeler and the shock setup that he came out with, which is what I have installed on here now, he has his, I think it's his coworker or one of his employees on the four-wheeler, and you know, he's bouncing up and down. First he does the stock shocks and they're like super stiff, they don't even move. John describes this machine, these shocks are set up to drive like a trophy truck. So if you see, like, you know, the rally cars or the you know, the trucks that run rally, or the truck races down in, like, you know, Mexico or whatever they are, I don't know, out in the desert, they're ripping across those bumps, and you know, the wheels are, you know, the shocks are taking the abuse, and the body of the machine is barely moving. I'm gonna hopefully get this out tomorrow and do a little bit of testing at a local place that I ride, which is like rocks out to you know what. So the stock shocks, after about 1,000 miles, they do tend to loosen up a little bit, but like I said, they're not going to be like this. So this is with the Elkas on, and as you can see, it's bouncing. I mean, look at that rock. I couldn't do that on my, even with my broken in shocks, I couldn't do that. I'm going to pull the camera up underneath one of the wheels so you can see it rock. All right, so this is the right front shock. All right. This is the right rear. Down. So guys, there you have it. Oh, another thing I want to mention. So getting up in here was extremely tight for me. So like I said, that's where you're probably going to have your most trouble, because there's not a lot of room. There's like a bracket right here. It gets in the way of like a ratchet. It's a pain in the butt. The other thing I want to mention is, let me bring this down. You're going to have to remove your lower control arm in order to get to the bolt right there for the shock, because the axle is going to be in the way. So what I did is I disconnected this lower control arm. Okay, this was able to lift up with the wheel off. I actually bungeed it up and had plenty of room to get in there, so that should help you guys. Other than that, it is pretty straightforward. So stay tuned. I'm going to take this out hopefully tomorrow and do some testing with some rocks. I'm just going to do a ride and see how it rides. I don't have anybody that's going to be riding behind me to see footage of, like, you know, the suspension moving around, but hopefully in a future video I'll be able to pull that out. So, all right, thanks for watching, guys. See ya. All right, here we go. Here we are testing out our Elkas. Got a camera on this shock in the rear. Try to go up some of these rocks. Hopefully, you know, the rear camera will catch the, you know, the shock doing its job. Already coming up through just from the parking lot down here, I feel, holy crap, I feel a huge difference. So gotta get used to it. It's not what I'm used to. It's a little bit softer, so it's gonna be a completely different ride. But I'm gonna go ahead and come up through here, do a little bit of rock crawling. So I feel a huge difference right away. Just the takeoff of the machine, you can feel it dip a little bit better. It's going to help with hill climbing, I have a feeling. It's going to help with climbing up over stuff. It's not going to be as stiff, and you're not going to have it probably as bad a wheel spin. But so far, I mean, I've driven maybe a half mile, and it is night and day. It is amazing. It's absorbing the bumps. Before, when I would traverse these rocks, I'd be bouncing all over the place. This is keeping me on the seat. I'm not feeling it in my knees as much. I will say, you know, riding this machine, especially sometimes we ride fast-paced, we're flying over rocks, we're flying around trails, routes, whatnot. You know, we're doing 25, 30 miles an hour, and on a machine that weighs 1,000 pounds with the rock setup that comes with it, the stock shocks, the end of the ride, my knees are killing me. So far, I don't even feel it in my knees. My feet are planted, my body is pretty straight, so I'm going to continue down here. There's a pretty good rock climb down here. I know I'm riding alone, but I'm going to, you know, try to take it easy. There are people here, so I'm not worried about, you know, any issues. If I have an issue, I know I can rate, you know, call somebody, but I'm usually against riding alone. But today, unfortunately, I didn't have anybody really to come out with me, so this is how it is. So I'm going to do a little bit more riding, all right? So we're going to go ahead and head up this. Looks like it's washed out quite a bit. We shall see. Job. I mean, here's a pretty good drop. Try to get that. Wow, that is so soft. Amazing. Night and day. I would have come down off that rock, and I'll tell you, it would have just whack, slammed down on, you know, on the rear, and it would have been ugly. day. I think it's like 70 degrees out. A little bit of sun, cloudy. You know, that stretch that we normally come down back there, I was only doing about 26 miles an hour, which is fast across a lot of stuff. It's a lot of rocks, a lot of, you know, whoops, whatever you want to call them. If I normally drive that quick with those stock shocks, my arms are beat up so bad. I was able to fly across those. That's pretty amazing. So I'm going to go up here a little bit. There's some more rocky terrain. It is not jarring. It is it's hard to explain. I mean, it's controllable, it's manageable. Unlike before, it was throwing you all over the place, which, you know, left you fighting to keep control of the ATV. Wow, I'm amazed. One more spot I'm going to go down to. Through here, my tracks, I was on it a little bit. I'm the only one that's riding this area right now, so you can see going back. You can see I'm not fighting the ATV. I'm just pointing it and it's going. Now what I don't want to do, wreck my machine, but for the benefit of the review, I'm trying to give you guys a really rocky ride. guys, so there you have it. Hester Edition Stage 1 Elka Shocks on a CForce 600 Touring. This is a 2022 model. The shocks are Stage 1. Again, they were fairly reasonably priced. If you look at the stock shocks to buy them, if you get, say, have damage, they're, you know, pretty expensive. So to get the Elka shocks to replace your stock shocks are, I believe, a huge upgrade. One thing that I felt was the high speed is just amazing, absolutely amazing. It does ride like a trophy truck, but it's a trophy ATV, right? It does absorb the bumps when you're running slow. I do feel that when you're digging in and climbing, it really, you know, bites down and gives you that quick grab, and then, you know, you can feel it expand out. Absolutely amazing. These shocks actually bolted up perfectly where the stock shocks were removed. There was no modifications needed. There was no grinding, no tools. 15mm are the bolts. The only thing that I noted was the top areas of the front strut towers were very tight to get in there with a ratchet and a wrench, but I was able to figure it out. And then when you remove the rears, you do have to remove the lower control arms. I bungeed them up because the axle is in the way. Just keep that in mind there. 1 to 10, 1 being the lowest, 10 being the highest, I'm gonna say it's a 10. It's an absolute winner for me. This was one of my biggest complaints. If you look at my 1,000-mile review, one was power, but you can fix a lot of that with clutching. I'm happy with the way this four-wheeler performs now. I think it likes to eat, it climbs, it goes through mud. You know, I'm very happy with it as far as that. I wish I had a little bit more, but beggars can't be choosers. I know it's a 600 and I'm getting what I paid for. So the suspension, the stock suspension was absolutely very stiff, but I did note this has 1,000 miles on it, and the stock suspension did actually loosen up, but not like these. So even at 1,000 miles, it might take you 10,000 miles to try to get to an area like this, and I still don't think you'll be there. So John Hester takes great pride in customizing the shocks to the machine and also to the individual and how you ride. So if you're a trail rider, weekend trail rider, you know, I'm out here in the middle of the woods. There's some rocks, there's some hills, there's some logs. Yeah, I go through mud. I'm not a big rock crawler. I'm not going out all weekend and crawling rocks. But so I told John, I'm just a, you know, trail rider. I told him my weight. You know, it's a touring, so it's going to take a little bit more weight, especially, you know, if I have a passenger, and my wife would be one of them, or my son, or somebody that got stranded. Or if you're a straight up, you know, rock climber and you're beating on the shocks, you know, he's going to custom tune them to your requirements. And so far, I'm ecstatic. Check out John Hester, Hester Motorsports. I'll have a link below in the description. The shocks took about, he was telling me they were about 8 weeks out from order. And I literally received them probably about seven weeks, maybe a little bit, 7.5. So yeah, check him out. John Hester, Hester Motorsports, teaming up with Elka. It's a win. Thanks for watching, guys.